Good habits are super healthy. These are things that we do on a routine. They move the needle forward. They really help us progress in a direction that we're seeking. And then on the other hand of that, there's the habits that maybe we fall into because they're easy. We're on autopilot. Maybe they served us at some point, but they're not benefiting us now. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to episode 95 of the Positivity Experience. Let's shift those bad habits to positive ones. Check it out. Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 95 of the Positivity Experience. It's your girl, Lori, and boy, are we going to talk about habits today. But before we start, I want to give a huge shout out to all of the newest Patreon members. And this week over on the Patreon, I am talking to you guys about the difference between gaslighting and manipulation. And so if you are a Patreon member, you get that episode and it should be up right now at your Patreon. And if you're looking to become a Patreon, you're welcome to do so at patreon.com/The Positivity Experience, or you can just click in the show description anywhere that you're getting this podcast right now. There's a link that can take you right out to that. Couple different tiers that you have as an offer. But over there, we are talking about gaslighting and manipulation, what the difference is, and kind of like what to look for. So that's what we're talking about today. And I wanted to just give a huge shout out to all of the newest members. And we're not going to do name shout outs. Some people like to remain anonymous. So I just want to welcome you to the Patreon family. I love you guys. So let's jump into today's topic. I'm so excited. And this one has been requested a lot on habits. You know, we all have habits. And I want to kind of break down habits because you're like, okay, I know what a habit is. Yeah, but it's just things that we do on autopilot, right? Like if you have, it's funny. There's a Dunkin' by me here. And literally, so my daughter was with me yesterday. We were going to pick up some medicine at Walgreens, which is like the turn before the Dunkin'. My body, when I'm driving that way, when I'm not going somewhere, in my brain, I'm just going directly to Dunkin'. Like I just go to Dunkin'. And so we're getting ready to pass it. And my daughter goes, hey, don't forget we're not going to Dunkin'. I was like, oh, you're right. Because my brain, it's a habit. My brain just went on autopilot. And that's typically where our habits come from, right? And well, that's not where they come from. That's what happens in our habits. And we can have those, like, let's call them bad. I don't really like to use good and bad, but let's go with it. Like bad habits, negative habits, whatever. And, you know, that could be like, oh, I have a habit of biting my nails. I have a habit of procrastinating. I have a habit of, you know, and think of a habit as something that you do like a routine almost that is maybe just not serving your best and highest good. So we want to figure out how do we shift those bad habits to a good habit, right? Because you're essentially saying for X amount of years or for this long, this is what I do every day. Let's say every day you get up and you eat oatmeal. Okay. Well, you can be like, okay, I like it. It's good for my heart. It's good heart health. It is good, but it's also a habit. You get up, you go in, you put all of the same toppings in it, or you get up, you make your coffee in the morning. It becomes a routine. Routines can become a habit. So the key is we want to replace them. But here is what I do. Now I do this with my clients who are looking to lose weight, change their eating habits, their dietary things. And I don't believe in just getting rid of stuff. Okay, so that's black and white, and we don't do black and white. There's 50 shades of gray. We're going to pick a couple and we're going to live there, but we're not going to go black and white when it comes to something like this. So let's say you have a habit, and let's say your habit is maybe just not eating healthy food all the time. Well, I don't believe, unless it is a dietary restriction or an ethical reason or something that you have an allergy to, that you should cut anything out. That's just me. You know, I don't believe in like removing things or looking at food as bad or good, or you know, I don't subscribe personally to any diet with a name other than the Mediterranean diet, which is a way of life anyway. So you can eat healthier, but if you want something, you reward yourself for it. But you do so understanding that there's a healthy relationship with food, right? But if you have a habit and you go, okay, I want to just not eat Burger King all day long. Okay, well, if you and I are starting to talk, I'm not going to be like, hey, you know what, tomorrow? And from here on out, you're not going to Burger King at all. No more Burger King, salads only. Well, first of all, that's not sustainable. Now I'm asking you, hey, you know that habit that you have, or you know that thing that you do, you're going to just stop right now. Now, that changes though when it comes to smoking. I don't necessarily, like with my clients who smoke, I give you alternatives, but we're not doing the whole, hey, we're going to cut down. Like we just stop. and then I fill it with different things. So it's gonna depend on what it is, but like smoking, things like that, sometimes you can't do that with drinking. So there's a lot of different areas that come in there. So, but that's why I said there's gray areas. It's not black or white. It's not this or that. It's not or, it's always and, right? So what we're going to do with any of your bad habits. So here's a little homework for you. Make sure you have your little paper and pen somewhere. Or you come back to this if you're driving. We're at like 5 minutes and 22 seconds in the podcast, is to come back and I want you to write down, we're doing this without judgment, right? So critiquing yourself, shaming yourself, feeling bad about yourself, none of that's going to benefit you in the least bit. So you say, okay, this is what my habit is. Okay. Good habits, bad habits, just write some of your habits down. Be honest with yourself. You trying to skirt around it doesn't help anybody. So see what your habits are. Now, are these habits moving you forward in the direction that you want to be to accomplish whatever these goals are or your way of life? Is this moving you forward? If the answer to that is no, before we start shifting things, I want you to say, okay, well, what kind of way of life, number one, do you want? What habits would you like to see created for yourself? So before you start trying to implement a good habit, you have to know what it is that you're trying to goal for. It's not going to be instant gratification. It's not going to be instant happiness. None of those things are real. So you're going to have to pump your brakes, be very, very slow, very meticulous in this, and start doing the micro-goaling, right? Go to episode 37 of this podcast. You'll be in micro-goaling. And this is important because you have to know what it is that you're doing and that you want out of your life before you can create a habit that's going to move the needle forward. So now what we're going to do, right? So this would be like if we're working together, I would then start implementing some of the good stuff without removing the things that you feel like have not been, productive for you. So let's go back to that fictitious thing that you eat Burger King all day long. I'm not going to have you stop Burger King right now. I'm going to give you alternatives. I'm going to say, you know what? I think in between your breakfast Burger King and your lunch Burger King, let's add something cool in. Let's add like a protein shake, or let's add, a vegetable, or let's do a small salad. And then after lunch, let's go for a walk. Like go for a 20-minute walk. See, you have to start adding in the positives before you start subtracting things that you're so used to doing. Because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to be like, I'm never going to eat this again. I'm not going to eat carbs. I'm not going to do this. Like, that's just not sustainable. And so I want you to be very honest with yourself. And rule of thumb is it takes 28 days to make a habit consistent every day, and 120 days and upwards of even farther than that to make it a way of life. Because the idea is to allow the habits to become autopilot. So if you bite your nails all the time, right? You're like, I bite my nails all the time, or I bite the skin around my nails all the time. That's become a habit. I mean, maybe it's a coping strategy, but it's still a habit. So like what I've done with people is say, okay, you can, I'm not going to give all my secrets away, but so I have tips for that too, right? So it's like, you add in things to make it not seem taboo. Where it becomes problematic is when you look at something and you're like, oh my God, I can't make a slide back. Yes, you can, and you will. If something has been a habit for that long for you, do you honestly, really, realistically think, I need you to get out of the perfection brain for a minute, that you're supposed to have new knowledge, implement this, and never slide back? Hard pass. That's not even a thing. You have to make the simple changes. So this is where your patience is going to have to come into play. You can't change it all. You can't just clean your whole house. You can't just, get up at 5 a.m. now when you've been used to sleeping in at 10. Like, that's not a thing. So you have to make small shifts, small, simple changes. So let's say you get up at 9 o'clock every morning now, okay? And you've decided you want to get up at 5:30. I don't know. You decide 5:30, I want to get up. I want to be productive. Number one, why? Know your why. Don't just say, I want to get up at 5:30. I'll be more productive. Okay. Maybe some people are more productive in the morning. Some are more productive at night. But why? First you have to know your why. Don't just do it because you're like, I think I'll feel better. Okay. That's fine. But you're not going to go from 9 to 5:30 tomorrow. What I would do is I'd have you get up 15 minutes earlier. And we're going to do that for about a week, a couple days to a week. Yep. 8:45. Up out of bed. Okay. Yep. And then we're going to bring that back a little bit more. Yeah. You might not be getting up at 5:30 for another 6 months. So don't rush these habits and these routine changes. Now, this is why you got to make a list. It's something I've done some short form videos on this too, but like if you're not planning out your week and then the night before, because keep in mind, you can plan your week, but things are going to arise. Just because you have a plan doesn't mean it's the plan. And these things are going to change pretty frequently and you can't always control it. So you're going to have to get on your little boogie board and you're going to have to ride that wave. So that's something to be aware of. You're going to have slip ups. You're going to have things that aren't always going to go as planned. But if you don't list the stuff that you're going to do, how can you make a new habit? Like, don't just stop taking the route of, I don't want to do the 5 journals, or I don't want to do this consistently, or I don't feel like doing those things, and then expect to have a result of consistency. You might have results, but you're not going to have consistent results. So sure, you could do a crash diet. You're going to get results, but you're not going to have consistent results. So you have to remember, this is the long game. When you're increasing your habits to a positive one from a habit that may not have been so productive for you, but might have served you at some point in time, it isn't going to be overnight. So you will fall backwards. You will slip up. Good. You just have more acknowledgement of it. And you're like, oh, okay, I see what I did there. That was a habit. I'm going to create a new way of life, but you got to be consistent. So if you're not willing to, at least do 120 days consistently, well, it's going to be difficult. Even if you slide back, then you're going to have to start all over again because you have to create it to where it goes on autopilot. Now, identify why you're doing these bad habits or negative habits. Like, why are you doing them? Well, I don't know. I get nervous and I like bite my nails. Like, okay, well, what are you nervous about? Like, some of your habits aren't the reason. They're typically the symptom of a deeper reason, which is why you got to go back to heal your stuff. I've had binge eating disorder all my life. I'm 51 years old. So luckily I've got her pretty much, I like to call her, I name all of my things. So like I have her under control a little bit, not control, but I walk hand in hand with her, which is why if you have a binge eating disorder or anything like that with an ED, you don't intermittent fast. That can be triggering. You don't try to do diets because again, that can be triggering. So with that being said, I know that while I was going through my stuff, growing up and going through my healing, food was my go-to. My go-to mechanism was to go eat as much food as I can. And I'm not lying when I say I could binge like nobody's business. When Paul and I first got together many years ago, I was stressed about something, still going through my healing. It was like 18 years ago. And, we got a large pizza and a thing of breadsticks, was it breadsticks? Cinnamon sticks from Dunkin'. See, Dunkin' on the brain, from Domino's. And he went into the bathroom. I literally I'm not lying to you. If Paul was here to tell you, I ate the entire pizza and the entire thing of cinnamon sticks. And then immediately upon that last bite, went into a complete crying meltdown fit about how much that I ate. And so then I started self-sabotaging myself. So then that was right before I started understanding the brain and the why do we do these things? Because it was a habit. My habit was to go to the food. So now that's why I don't deprive myself of anything. If I want a piece of pizza, I'm gonna have a piece of pizza. I just know that I don't look at food as negative. So that's another thing I do is I help people understand that some of these things that you look as negative, let's not look at it as negative. Let's just give it empathy and sympathy and compassion based on the things that it's helped serve us in our way. So then the binge eating became a habit, not because of stress, but because that's something I could control. I could control going into my pantry and the whole, hey, don't keep it in the house thing. Yeah, that's fine. But I don't want to live that life either. Because if I don't keep it in the house, let's say I'm like, if there's ding dongs in the house, I don't mean Paul, see what I did? But if there's ding dongs in the house, I got to be able to be okay that if I want a bite of a ding dong, I'm going to have some. But I don't have to have the whole bag, the whole pack. So I don't necessarily believe in removing those things when it comes to food if you have an eating disorder, just me personally, because I know it's been effective and then it helps my clients too. But that's a little side note, but it did become a habit. And so I had to replace that habit by changing my mindset. So see, that's the other thing. Change your mindset. If you're saying, you know what? I can never do this. I can never complete a mission. I always start things, I don't finish them. So now you're giving yourself every reason to sabotage yourself. So I had to make changes by allowing myself, and I did all the things. I did all the diets. I did the Atkins, which is basically keto. I did Atkins. I did South Beach. I did 1,200 calories. I did, you name it. I have done it through many parts of my life, not over the last like 10, 15 years, something like that. But like, I trust me, in and out, because I just was looking for instant fix, and that will never change a habit that is not productive for you. So your habits, you have to go to the deeper rooted issue as to why those coping strategies are there in the first place. You can't just do it on the surface. And this is why it takes time. So if you're like, well, I have an eating disorder and this is what I'm struggling with. Yeah, well, we are going to end up talking about your childhood, or we're going to end up talking about something traumatic that happened to you at work. And you're like, well, I'm talking about my food. Yeah, that's a coping strategy. A lot of our habits are just the symptom to the deeper rooted issue. So you got to be very clear in that. So you've got to identify the cause of where these habits and where maybe some of that sabotaging behavior is coming into play. So in order to replace the habit, you got to make it look appealing. You don't want to go from eating Burger King 7 days a week to having a salad and eating that all the time. You're not a rabbit. And that's with any part. If you're talking about like, somebody asked me about excessive spending, right? Which is also a coping strategy. Right? And that's a distraction. You're distracting yourself from dealing with a deeper rooted issue. That's why we have so many of these things that we deal with, right? It's easier to go on and get an instant dopamine hit from Amazon. I know. I feel like I'm like having an affair with the guy at Amazon and Michael's, but mine's different because I replaced my over shopping on, Amazon. Listen, don't get me wrong. I still like my shopping, but I don't do it as a distraction. And I spent more money at Michael's because making the projects, making blankets, making things like that. And Paul had said it. He said, oh my God, I love that you are crocheting. I don't care that we're spending some money on yarn. We're nowhere spending anywhere near the money that we were spending when you were getting containers at container stores and trying to paint every room in the house once a year. And he's like, you're doing so much better because you replaced something with something that benefited you. And I get to give things away or even sell them at some point. So I just replaced that habit. I dug to the deeper rooted issue that I was like, okay, time management. My time management, not all that great because I'm trying to do it all at one time. So I had to address the bigger issue, and I replaced the habit of constant shopping, though I did just get some boots that were on massive sale on Kate Spade, but I needed them and I wanted them. And yeah, if I want them, I'm going to get them, but I'm going to do so intentionally. You don't just spend because it becomes a habit of a dopamine hit. And that's why that's important. So you have to identify the root cause, replace it with something positive. Mine's turned out to be a little bit of cooking, like I do my meal prep, and then definitely crochet. But I replace that with something healthier. I do, I'm back in the gym. I've definitely done that, but little bitty steps. Okay. But you can't just think that you're just going to stop a behavior. You're not just going to stop. You got to stop trying to do that because then you're looking for that instant reward and that's not going to happen. Now, how do you actually change those things is again, consistency, right? So if you go, okay, I'm going to commit to doing these 5 journals. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, if you go to my YouTube, the Positivity Experience, go to playlist, you'll see it on the 5 journal series. So what you would do is you could remind yourself, okay, every day I'm going to do these journals. Well, what's your routine going to be? Don't do the journals at 7:00 today and then 5:00 tomorrow and then 1:00 the next week and then 4:30 in the afternoon. You can't do that. What kind of routine are you giving yourself? Which is why you want to have a good morning routine, and that starts the night before. Lay out your clothes. What do you have to get prepared for tomorrow? Have a routine. Make it, because the idea behind a routine, which is a habit, essentially, your routine becomes a habit, right? And so when you start to do that, it becomes autopilot. Like I said, get up, I just go to the gym, or I get up and I'm going to get up. I'm going to say my mantra. It just has become, I don't have to think about it. Ideally, you want these amazing habits to become routine so you're not thinking about them. And then where's the reward system for you? Because remember, your brain works on rewards. That's that dopamine that we get. That's why we like shopping, right? So that dopamine hit, you can still give that to you. So let's say you decided you're going to clean a room. Okay, let's say you're going to clean your room. Let's say you're going to clean your room, and you're going to organize it, and you're going to declutter it, and you're going to sell and repurpose, and you're going to donate. Okay. So you're going to plan. First of all, why? Well, because you know that your energy, your house is an extension of your energy, Right. Okay. What do you hope to gain from it? Well, I'd like to just have my room be just nice. Okay, good. Love it. Okay. So what's your plan? Well, I'm going to clean it. No, you're not. Well, yeah, I just told you what I'm doing. Yeah. What's your plan? Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm going to go through my closet. Okay. No, not I guess anything. Pen to pad, write down your steps. Stop looking and saying you're going to do it all. No. And stop trying to think that you have to start the closet and finish the closet in one day. Instead of doing the closet, do one side of the closet. Instead of doing the whole entire dresser, do 2 drawers. But make a plan for it. You want to plan to where you're setting yourself up for success. So then if the reward, so in this case, let's say you're cleaning your entire room and you're decluttering it and you're doing all of that. Okay. Maybe a reward is maybe you've been looking at this new book that you wanted to read. Maybe you're thinking, you know what? Maybe I want to get back into coloring. Maybe I want to start crochet. Get yourself some, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do that though until I get this room at a period of time. Like I'm going to give myself a month to do this. And at the end of that month, I'm going to, and I'll have a space for your crochet and say, okay, I'm going to have my crochet and I'm going to have my hook and I'm excited. I'm going to try this. Okay. Don't get it until you're rewarding yourself. So I always say, try to have rewards that aren't food rewards. And like, let's say you decided you're going to go to the gym. You've been in the gym for a month and you needed new sneakers, but not really bad. Like you didn't need them for like your feet, but you were like, I really want those new sneakers. Good. Put that on there as a reward system for yourself. Give yourself the treat. You don't need other people's accolades, but you do need your own. And it could be something, it doesn't even have to cost money. I'm going to drive, down to this new pond and I'm going to go walking there in a week after I get these things taken care of. Like have it help you. Don't have it just, give you some instant gratification. Right. And so when you have the reminders for yourself and it becomes routine, well, daggone, now we're here. Now, again, if you have a negative or a bad habit that's being triggered by something, we gotta address the trigger. You can replace it all day long with good things. But if you're still not dealing with what the trauma or what the negative thing is that's spawning it, the trigger is spawning it, well, it's going to be problematic because then you're just putting lipstick on a pig. I think there was some research that said that, some people have created new healthy habits in 18 days and some has been almost a year, like 250 some days. The sweet spot's about 120 days, with 28 days kind of becoming a habit, 120 days becoming like autopilot. But again, this is being consistent. So why are you not consistent? Well, because I'm asking you to do something that's new, but you're not consistent because you don't have a plan. See, we're not consistent because you're waiting to feel like it. We know motivation's BS. Stop with the motivation. Okay. That's not real. And you can be inspired, but if you plan it, it's not going to be overwhelming. A lot of the reasons that you're so inconsistent is because you have a very skewed sense of how fast things are supposed to happen. That's one of the biggest things. When people aren't consistent, it's because they're not seeing those instant results. Oh, well, this is why you have to plan it. You list it, you plan it, you understand where those other negative habits are coming from, and you give it grace, and you understand that, you know what, you will fall back in those at some point. And you're going to have more knowledge. You'll be like, oh, I see what I did there. No big deal. Cool, it's okay. I know what I did. Yep, that was just habit. So when you do that, you're giving yourself the idea and understanding that you're not perfect. You're never going to be perfect. It's never a thing. It's always progression. And you got to slow down to move forward. And that's just the facts. So if you don't like the habits that you have, dig deeper as to why you don't like them and where they're coming from. And then you say, okay, what habits do I want? So now you're going to have to get clear in what you want. See, you're trying to create a habit to make you healthy and to make you happy, but you don't even know what that is. What makes you happy? What makes you tick? Well, you got to find that out. You got to debunk. You got to say, I don't believe in half the things I grew up with. Great. Let's get rid of them. This is your life. So you can't build a habit that's positive when you don't know what you're striving for. And it can't be blanketed like happiness and peace. That's great. But that different things provide that for us. So when you're in that space is when I want you to allow yourself to, really absorb it, really sit with it, really think about what it is that you want, because then you're just looking for habits to replace something to give you instant gratification that may give you results, but they're not going to give you consistent results. So if your new habit is going to be going to the gym, don't go say, I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week. Don't do that. And go with a plan. Are you going to do back and biceps today? Are you doing a class? What class are you doing? Are you doing chest and triceps? Like, what's your plan? You don't just go to the gym with no plan. That's what I'm saying, is if you're not planning and you're not understanding the why, how can you create a habit that's going to be sustainable? You can't. You can't be sustainable in something that you don't know why you're doing it in the first place. And that's the whole thing on habits. Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't beat yourself up and go, I have to do this new habit. You know what? Look, I've yet to make my bed every day of the week. I might get froggy and do it a couple of days a week. It's not important to me. If it was important to me, I would make my bed every day. But I know that I'm not going to sit there and try to have a habit of making my bed every day. Then I'm going to do a load of laundry. Then I'm going to do my client. No. That's not realistic to me. And the making my bed, looks great. Love the pillows, love all that. If I do it, I do it. If I don't, I don't. Because that's not important to me. Because it's great to do it, and it does set your day, and it does show that you're accomplished. Like, there's obviously scientifically, psychologically proven. But again, it doesn't move the needle ahead, or it's not like it's holding me back. It's not a bad habit. It's just something that I just don't do. It's not important to me. So that's what I'm saying, is you have to understand why you're doing the habits. Are you doing the habits because your mom does the habits? Or are you doing the habits because everybody tells you to? Find your own reasons. What is important to you? Why do you want to change these habits? Why are they bad habits? Are they really bad habits? Or are you telling yourself that they're bad habits because they're not what somebody else would do? That's another thing to look at. Maybe it's not a bad habit. That's why I said, if it's not moving the needle forward ahead for you, if you don't feel as though it's bringing you value, then don't do it. Right? But that's not that easy to be like, just don't do it. You got to create a new path. You got to show that, hey, well, I'm so used to doing this not productive thing. I don't know what else to do. I know I'm not supposed to do this, but what do? Well, you got to start adding in things. And when you add them in, don't try to stop doing all of the other things. It's going to take time. It's going to take patience. And it's definitely going to take that consistency, right? So don't be committed to doing those 5 journals, or committed to cleaning the room, or committing to losing the weight, or committing to doing whatever it is until you're ready to understand you're going to plateau. There's going to be days that aren't going to go as you planned, but you keep plugging ahead. You don't give up. I promise you this, and I don't make any promises. I guarantee you that if you give up and you stop moving, it doesn't speed up things faster for you. That's a fact. That's a fact. You quitting and you stopping and you not betting on yourself and you not putting yourself as a priority does not make things happen faster. And that's the whole deal. So to create a healthy habit, you have to know why you're doing it. Create a plan for it. Understand why the habits that you're doing now aren't positive. Where'd they come from? Not when did you start them? That too, but where did they come from? What's the deeper rooted issue? And maybe that's time to book a session with me or somebody. Maybe it's time to unbox that so some of those habits aren't so self-sabotaging. Some of those habits are very self-sabotaging because that's how we feel, that's what we're worth based on some things that we grew up with. And now it's become a way of life where you don't even think about it. You just do it. You don't like it, but you do it anyway. So you're telling yourself, and this is something to understand, when the moment somebody says to you, that's how I am, and they don't mean it like, oh, I'm so balanced, that's just how I am. If they're like, yeah, this is just how I am, they are committed to not working on themselves. They have told themselves, this is just how I am, and you can deal with it or not. And that's great if you're in a balanced space. But when that happens, you have to just let that be. Some people are not willing to move the needle for themselves. But you got to allow yourself to move the needle for you. You're important. You got to value yourself. You got to allow yourself to give yourself that value. And when you do, you'll understand that you're going to slip up. It's going to be slow. You're going to have to change some things. You're going to have to incorporate some things. But before you just stop doing everything cold turkey, you need to give yourself a reason to understand the difference between something that's healthy and unhealthy for you. One's going to feel really good. The other one might feel a little hollow. Well, you're going to want more of the thing that's good. Well, you're going to have to commit to it. And you're going to have to pump your brakes. And you're going to have to take time. And you're going to have to understand the why. But when you do that, babes, you're going to have so much more joy. And you're going to be able to create these autopilot habits. You know, that's a whole idea. You want to do these things autopilotly. Not a word, is no. But yeah, that's kind of the spiel on it, guys. Don't beat yourself up for your habits. Understand where they're coming from. And then let's do things that are going to move the needle for you. Not other people. Not other people need to do them. Not you doing them for other people. You're doing this for you. And guess what? And I mean this. You absolutely, without a doubt, are so important to yourself. You need to be valued. You need to be loved by yourself. And that is the biggest habit that you ever need. Check it out.